Welcome to Becoming Spirit Fluent, the enchanting podcast hosted by me, Stacee Magee, renowned medical intuitive and spiritual leader. In this mystical podcast, I will take you on a transformative journey, sharing wisdom and healing insights from the spiritual realm. So we're going to be talking about spiritual healing for generational trauma today. I used to do classes like this literally twice a week, and I got burnt out. And so now I just do them every once in a while. But these are classes that are focused on spiritual healing. So what we do kind of in this class is we usually spend about a half hour talking about the spiritual side of everything, what it means, kind of an educational portion. And then we do a little energy healing, Reiki type healing. It's not Reiki, but at the end. And so you can stick around with that. It's kind of like a meditative process. And so, yeah, everybody stick around and have fun. I have noticed that not as many people stick around when we do classes because everybody's kind of waiting for readings. So if you're interested in readings, Free Friday Healing Call is next Friday. But I got this amazing card deck. I usually don't use cards for readings. This is an oracle deck. It's different. And it really talks about what you need for healing. And so this is the deck. It's created by an Indigenous woman. It's called Sacred Medicine Oracle Deck. And thank you, Carly. And so I just wanted to pull a card for us and set the intention for today. Like I said, I don't really use these for reading. I just use them to set our intentions. Nothing against anyone who does card readings. I just don't do them that way. In fact, you'll find out really quick because I'll have to look in the book what it meant. So this card came in upside down. And so actually the author of this actually said when it comes in upside down, it shows deep healing. And so I just wanted to show you it's upside down, but the right side up is the birch tree and it says humility. And so this is our intention for today. So I'm just going to feel in what I feel the intuitive messages for this, and then I'll tell you what it says in the book too. So we shall see. So just feeling into this, the humility is, so what I hear from Spirit about this is the humility is to learn that not everything is about you. And that's kind of felt a little harsh. And I'm like, okay, then not everything's about me. And so what I'm hearing is that we are so focused on self. We are so focused inwardly that we forget the generations past. We forget those that have come before us and the experiences before us. And I keep hearing the phrase like, no person is an island, no man is an island, right? And so with this, that makes a lot of sense based to me on what we're doing. So I'm going to look this up. If you have this deck, it's on page 29. I'm going to read this because, again, I don't usually do card readings. I just talk to Spirit during my readings. I'm just like, whatever, tell me what we need to know, Spirit. So the healing affirmation is, I am a significant part of creation upon this planet. I choose to take up my rightful space. Interesting. Birch invites you to reach your crown up to the cosmos, one with creation, steady and rooted. Birch is layered with bark, and the white base is filled with marks that look like scratches. Yet we could have used its medicine to build canoes. One could call birch imperfect. Yet as we see the beauty and strength, its medicine reminds us to take up the space we divinely deserve, despite all of our perceived imperfections. Just like the flowers bloom in their fullest expression, the moss and the moss that spreads its greenish hue along the forest floor, the stars that shimmer for thousands of years too, are asked to see the same power in your presence. Are there places in your life where you make yourself smaller or insignificant? Where do you hear yourself repeating these words over and over again? Birch tree is here to call you out of this spell. Perhaps sometimes the voices have told you to shine, but not too bright, to rise, but not so much that you are full of yourself. So it says, even with your perceived wounds and scars, like a weathered white bark of a birch tree, you are breathtaking. Beautiful. Someone on TikTok said they are on an island right now. I love that. That's so cool. Okay, so that's our intention for today. And I think that was beautiful. So let's talk about generational trauma. Now, first, I want to clarify the difference between generational trauma and ancestral trauma, because there's a difference. We, and I'm actually going to pull up some of my genealogy, and I'll kind of give you guys, those of you who are on Zoom can see this. Those of you who are on TikTok won't. But when we think of, you know, our genealogy, our family, our ancestors, our things like that, there's so much involved. You know, there's many people, hundreds of people, thousands of people that came before us, and we come from great ancestry, right? And so the ancestry talks about the generations before us in the instance of, you know, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, the beginning of time. When we talk about ancestral lineage, we talk about, you know, where did the core of who you are originate, right? So for instance, here for me, and I've done a lot of ancestral work for me, and if you guys are interested in ancestral work, I always say with generational trauma healing, you don't have to do this, but it's so beautifully healing and understanding that if you do your genealogy, you can understand some things. So those of you who have signed up on Zoom are going to see some screen stuff. I apologize, TikTok viewers, you're not going to see this, but you can go watch the replay later. So this is a website called Relative Finder, and this one is super valuable. It is run, oh my gosh, what's the company? It's connected to one of the genealogy classes. It's connected to the Family Search. So you do all your genealogy in Family Search, and then you can connect it with Relative Finder. Now, this is super helpful for me in generational trauma healing, because somebody earlier during, we were kind of like getting started on TikTok, was like, oh, aren't you related to Robin Williams? Yes, I am. And it's very distant. It's like 5, 6. It's like, actually, it's like 8th cousins. It depends on which side, because I'm actually related on like 2 sides of the family. And I think one's 5th cousins and one's 8th cousins. It's weird, because my husband and I actually have generational similar ancestry through a couple lines, which is weird, but luckily it's not like, anyways. So I can look and I can say, okay, here's Robin Williams. I know what he dealt with emotionally, right? We can go back even further and we can connect to, and we're kind of looking, I'm just going to clear this. We can look at all of these different people where we have connections. And these connections can tell us, okay, I know what this person went through. If I'm experiencing something similar, some weird emotions, maybe this is a kind of an idea of where I can go for healing. So I'm going to click on this one, because this is an example I use often. Here's one. Anne Boleyn is my 14th great aunt. Everybody knows what Anne Boleyn went through, right? So if I am looking at healing the feelings, like, and this is some feelings that I have a lot, of being trapped, of having no choice, of being having no freedom, and desperately wanting my freedom, right? And then I'm like, oh wait, I'm related to Anne Boleyn. We look at these things and we look at the DNA, and the DNA actually looks like chains. And those chains are the chains that bind us to ancestors and what they've gone through. And so anything that an ancestor has gone through and they didn't get an opportunity to heal is going to get passed on through DNA. It's going to get passed on through generational energies. And so even though she was my aunt, there is still an energetic connection to her. And so those energies are going to get passed through. And so we can go on and on. I was just looking to see, let's see what else we have. Like, I don't know. Now I'm kind of getting all lost here, but you guys can see, you can look at like some of the different relatives and things like that can give us ideas of like what these people have gone through and things like that. So just a kind of a fun way that if you don't know some ancestry can help you. You don't need to do stuff like this. However, I'm going to try to stop screen share here. However, it is definitely super useful. So I'm sorry, guys. I have to like find there. Stop screen share. Okay, cool. So do I ever, yeah, this is actually a great question. Someone asked, do I ever feel like I have a whole bunch of people standing by my bed at night? Probably I'm gonna just trying to like get my attention, right? Oftentimes it's their ancestors, sometimes they're spirits and ghosts. And yes, I do have ancestors that hang out, right? And so ancestors are with us for many different reasons. And the story that I like to tell that gives you guys an idea of how these things work is one that I had with a client during one of her, I think we were doing a medical intuitive reading for her at the time. So I'm going to tell you this story. And it was a really interesting story. So this lady who came on, she was a psychic, she was a yoga master. She was way more Zen than I could ever hope to be, because you guys know I'm a little chaotic, right? And she's just like this Zen master, calm guru. And she comes on and it's for this medical intuitive session. And she was like, okay, I have adrenal issues, but here's the thing. I have no idea why I'm in fight or flight. Like none. Absolutely none. And to me, we look at fight or flight as, you know, because of the adrenal issues, it gets lodged. There's a couple places that fight or flight gets lodged. It gets lodged up in your C1 vertebrae, it gets lodged in your kidneys, it gets lodged in your heart, are usually like the top three areas. Sometimes also the gut and reflecting into the skin, because the skin is literally the mirror of the gut. And so, you know, I was like, at first I was like totally taken aback, because, you know, some of the clients that I get, like, they're other like famous healers and like psychics and like people that I'm like, why are you coming to little old me? Right. And I felt a little bit like overwhelmed. I was like, okay, let's figure this out. And so I went in and I start communicating with her subconscious. And I was like, can you show me why you're in fight or flight? Can you tell me what's going on? And I was taken into this vision of this woman who was frantically, fearfully running through a forest. Now, this woman that was during the session had already told me, like, she's like, I've never had childhood trauma. Nothing bad's ever happened to me. Like, I've had a great life. I had good parents. I never went through anything dramatic, right? And so the picture of what I was seeing was completely the opposite of how she described her life. And so I was just like, what is going on here? And so I asked her subconscious, I was like, what does this have to do with anything? And the subconscious replies to me and it goes, well, I'm Jewish, you know. And I was like, okay, awesome. But again, what does this have to do with stuff? And so I didn't get any more information. And usually when the information stops, it's a signal to kind of talk to the client. And I said, okay, this is what I was told. Your subconscious is indicating you're Jewish. And she was like, yes, I am. And I was like, okay. And then this is the vision that I had. Does any of this make sense to you? And she goes like this. She goes, oh, and she goes, oh my God, my grandmother for 2 months ran through the forest from the Germans during World War II, trying to get to safety. And I was like, no wonder you're in fight or flight. No wonder. And there's actually scientific studies that have been specifically done on the Jewish population who went through World War II, following them, their children, and their grandchildren, showing how those experiences had made their bodies either more or less resilient to stress and other things. And more recently, there was another study done on the Irish potato famine. And they've even studied the people who have gone through the Black Plague. And they have found they've gone through these really, really stressful times. And so that resilience that has kind of been passed through the body, but then a lot of these people end up with autoimmune disorders and they end up with other health problems. And they're like, why? Like this gal was like, why? I eat really good. I exercise. I do yoga. I'm not stressed. I've never had any trauma. Why? And so this is how these things work. Grandma went through a really dramatic experience. Thank you, everybody, for sending the hearts and the likes over on TikTok. horribly traumatic experience. And, you know, when we look back, one of the biggest phrases during that time my grandpa used to give to me was, suck it up, buttercup, right? We're talking about a generation that was not allowed to emotionally process. They were not allowed to, we live goals on TikTok. They were not allowed to express their emotions or talk about them. It was just expected that you're just like, yep, that happened. Go back on your normal life. There was no therapy. There was nothing like that, right? So grandma had all these things that happened to her, and she just had to go, okay, got to go back to life. Got to go back into survival. Got to take care of the family. Got to do whatever, right? And so as grandma moved on, she never processed her emotions. And then when grandma is carrying her mother, the eggs that would become her are inside mother, right? And so all of grandma's emotions are ingrained into mother and then passed to granddaughter. And so this is how things keep passed over and over and over, generation to generation to generation. And yes, absolutely. Somebody on TikTok reminded me there's a book called It Didn't Start With You. Very, very good book if you guys want to look into that. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this. If you're wanting to learn more about this concept, epigenetics is a great place to look. And science is finally realizing that our emotional experiences affect us. And they don't just affect us, but they affect our children and our children's children, and on and on. My family more recently has been going through heart issues. My brother went into heart failure at 38. My dad actually is going in for a triple bypass in 2 weeks. I have heart issues that I am healing. And I want to underline that. My heart issues are healing. I want to speak that into existence. My sister is working on healing heart issues as well. And so it's like this pattern in our family. And I have noticed that it's probably, my grandfather had heart issues and circulation issues. And it seems to start younger and younger and younger every generation that goes on, that it isn't healed, right? And so somebody asked the question, this is a great question, can it eventually stop in the generations completely if you and your sister have no children? So we look at this, and the best way to look at generational stuff, now to me, generational, you know, we talked about ancestors like hundreds of years ago. Generational is usually 14 generations and younger. So 14, 13, you know, all the way up to 1 or 2 generations. So does it stop if you don't have kids? Not always, because one, it's in your body. 2, the question is, do you have nieces and nephews? Is there other family members, right? So if you haven't healed your trauma, you pass it on. Now, somebody asked the question, you know, does my child get this? Oftentimes they do. Now, I want to pause with that, because then it creates great guilt as parents. Oh my God, I just traumatized the crap of my family. I passed all this crap on. I don't want to pass this on to generations. Here's the thing you have to remember. We chose our families before we existed, right? We had a moment with our ancestors. We looked at our life path and we said, this is my life path. This is my chosen family. And we chose that life path for distinct purposes of learning, of growth, of our soul and our spirit, right? And so we took that path on purpose. And so, you know, for me, the first time Spirit taught me that concept, I was like, that's fucked up, right? That is so fucked up. You know, it's just the worst thing in the world to think about all of this stuff, you know, is happening, and that we kind of chose that path. But then Spirit was like, remember, those that chose the hardest path have the greatest rewards, right? Those that chose the hardest path have more spiritual gifts to support them, more ancestors to support them, more things, right? And so where there is great suffering, there's great opportunity. And I know that it sounds horrible. And I don't know. Like I said, I argued with Spirit with this for like forever. And finally I was just like, whatever. So when we look into generational healing, can we heal the people behind us? Sort of. So when we first start with our healing, we're like, I'm healing me, right? And we talked about that when I pulled the card deck about being focused on me. And that's the first place we focus. I am feeling sick, tired, depressed. I have trauma. I need to heal. Right? And we don't recognize or think about the little connections, the spider web to the ancestors and the generations before us, right? We don't think about that chain where we're each a part of that link, right? And so when we do our healing, and you can do this with anything, maybe you're going to therapy, maybe you're doing just some meditation. I would suggest doing this on any healing practice you're doing. Set the intention. This medication is not only healing to me, but I allow the healing to be passed backwards to all generations and ancestors who will receive it. I ask that the healing be sent forward to all posterity in the future that is willing to receive the healing. I ask that it be sent to all dimensions, all layers. And I do that, and we're going to do this during our little healing part of this class when we get into the energy healing. And what we are doing is saying, I'm getting some healing work. And hey, if you want it, if your soul accepts it, I will send it to you. If it doesn't, allow it to skip back to the other generations. And that's the intentions that I always set if I'm doing healing, so that now every healing I do for myself, every meditation I do for myself is a generational healing. It's saying, hey, I got some trauma. I have SA trauma and stuff from when I was very young, all the way up to my teenage years. My mom had it, my grandma had it. Okay, so there's generations of that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm sending this to everybody else. And if their soul accepts it, then maybe they'll get a little bit of healing too. And if they reject it, then that's their choice. It's, I'm not going to force it on anybody. Everybody has agency, right? But you will find that there are ancestors that are waiting for these opportunities to heal. They're waiting for someone to bring them this healing, because once you cross over, the healing becomes a little bit more tricky because you don't have a physical body, right? And so without a physical body, the healing takes longer. It's a little more difficult, and they can definitely heal on the other side, right? This is not saying they can't, but it's just more powerful when someone who is like in their meat suit is doing it, right? It's kind of like you think about a ghost. It was funny. I had a conversation with a client. We were doing a mediumship session, and I think it was her aunt that came through, if I remember correctly. And she was like, "Is my aunt giving me any signs?" And her aunt was like, "Yeah, I try to flicker the lights, but it's hard." And I was like, and so she was telling me like it's so hard that like I can get it to flicker once and she barely notices. She goes, "This ghost thing is hard," right? And so I was relaying this to the client. She goes, "You're right. I have seen like the street light will like flicker once, and then I'm like, is that her?" And then it doesn't flicker again. And so you think about this ghost, it's like I'm really trying to flick this light on and off, and I can't do it because it's harder when you don't have that physical body, right? How do they heal on the other side? That's a great question. There are ancestors and people who are designated healers on the other side. Usually it's a family member. So here's a great example that I use. My daughter had just a beautiful, beautiful soul that was a friend of hers who passed away, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. And when he passed away, I went to his funeral. I'm always a mom to like all my kids' friends. So it's like I have 7 kids of my own and like 33,000 other kids that just kind of come along. My son's in the Army, and all of his Army buddies call me mom because I send them goodies and take care of them. But anyways, long story short, I went to the funeral, and he was at the funeral. They're often at the funeral, and I could see he was in great turmoil. And he had a bald man that was with him. I remember this distinctly. And I remember I said, "Shauna, do you know what his grandfather looked like?" And my daughter, Shauna, and she was like, "Oh yeah, he was bald and this and that." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So this kid was like in his turmoil, like raging energy, just because it was just like, he had some issues prior to passing, addictions and things. And grandpa was there trying to calm him down the whole time. The whole time he was there, and he just kept looking at me, and he's like, "Don't worry, we got this. Don't worry, we got this." I did not have any communication with this kid up until the past 3 months ago, when he came back to me and his energy was like night and day different. He was happy. He was bubbly. We were in Target and he's like, tell Shauna to get this swimsuit. And he goes, tell Shauna about butterflies. She knows about butterflies. And all of a sudden we found like this Stegosaurus dinosaur that was randomly, like, we couldn't find it. And he was like, I got healed. I'm better. But it took, I don't know what the family did on the other side. We were in Target. I didn't really do a lot of communicating, but it took the family on the other side a lot of work. And I do believe also the family here, you think about, how many of you pray for those that have already crossed over? How many of those of you prayed for your family members or sent meditations or prayers up for people who have already passed over, right? That helps too, right? I know one of the most beautiful things that I witnessed is, this is, I think, really typical in most Asian cultures, but Japan and Korea seem to do this really well. Where like even yearly, they're like, I put my ancestors' picture up, we pray with them, we offer them food and remember them. And I think that those things really help as well. So hopefully that kind of gives you guys a good idea of how generational trauma occurs. And kind of how it works with healing it. And so when you look at healing, and I talk about this all the time, healing's like an onion, guys. You're going to peel back a layer, you're going to peel it back, and you're going to cry. And then you're going to go, shit, there's another layer. And you're going to peel that back, and you're going to cry, and you're going to have your moments, and then, oh, there's another layer, and another layer, and another layer, until eventually you get down to the nubbins. And there's always something to heal, whether it's your stuff, generational stuff, ancestral stuff, there's always something you can heal. And so I love that we have opportunities to heal. I will always say that don't be frustrated if you're like, I thought I healed this, and things come up, right? Oftentimes when things come up like this, it's that generational or ancestral stuff, right? And so it doesn't mean you're not doing a good job healing. It's just showing you other avenues and opportunities and places. Let's see. Sissy has a question that I missed. I'm looking. Generational. Okay, she was just asking about generational and ancestral. And how can someone understand when adopted? Ooh, that's a great question. So adoption is a whole different issue here, because when you're adopted, you have your family heritage, that's DNA, everything you're getting DNA wise. And then you have the family and emotional stuff that is coming through, like a love type bond, like an adoption bond, through, spending time with people. So we have nurture versus nature, basically, and so adoption is that nurtured energy. And then, inherited DNA stuff is that nature. And so, looking at that, some is learned stuff and some is inherited stuff. And I know this is a great example that I use is like with my son, he never really knew his real dad. He was mostly just raised by my husband, along with all the other kids. I was a single mom of 2. And so all the kids were raised by my husband, never really by their real dad. And we, very much taught them a certain set of values and things like that. And my son, despite everything we tried with him of giving him a good life and teaching him good values, still ended up acting like his bio dad. and we're like, well, there's a strong connection here with that. So, it is just a little more difficult because you have 2 layers of things to heal, but it's never impossible. And then, of course, when we think about, ancestral DNA, often adoptees don't know the family. They don't know what's going on. And so the one thing I want you to remind you is like, while it's fun to know your genealogy and all of that stuff, you don't need to know it to heal. You don't need to know who it was or who it belonged to heal it, right? And so that's something that's very important to do. I don't want anybody who's adopted to go, okay, well, I don't know who my bio dad, mom is, or grandparents are. There's no way I can heal this. That's not true. You can just recognize what's there and work on healing and releasing that, right? And I always say, recognize and release, recognize and release. Someone on TikTok says you can't change genetics. Well, let's look at that. We can change anything. It's epigenetics, right? And so that epigenetics, that inherited behaviors from his bio dad, but can he heal this? Sure. Is it going to take a lot of work? Also, sure, right? And so there's, definitely stuff that needs to be healed. And it's some of that's up to him, right? And so, and it's really, really interesting to me too, is that when we talk about our children choosing our family, I have 7 kids ranging from 26 to 11. So my children, that I had at a younger age have a vastly different parent than my children now, right? So I don't meditate now, or back then, like I do now, right? And so I've healed some, and I've had children in my healed version and in my unhealed version, right? So my unhealed version passed all that unhealed stuff to him, and then he's passing unhealed stuff to his kids until he heals. But that's part of their path, right? They're like, I knew my dad was going to have these issues because that's part of my learning journey and path, right? And so, and I didn't, obviously we have agency and things like that, but you guys know what happened to my son back in March. And I was skeptical of, the thought path that, there's a predestined things in our life. And I think that, it's some predestined and some agency at this point, because your decisions determine your destiny. But also, I think that we see that life path before we choose to come to this existence. And we're like, yep, I need to go through that experience so that I can become this person, so that I can become this, have this spiritual growth and that spiritual learning, right? And so when he had his experience, there were just things that were like, okay, there's no explaining that this wasn't predestined. Even his artery structure in his face. So normally you have arteries in your cheek and they just kind of go up here and they perfuse his arteries. And the doctor said he'd never seen anyone like this, ran up and back to his brain. So when he lost blood flow up there, these arteries took over and regrew. And I was like, dang, you were designed for that experience, right? His body was literally designed differently to accommodate for that. He had thicker blood, so they flowed, he went to Boy Scouts and learned techniques to tell his friend, to do these things. And so I do believe that there's some of this predestination, but that the predestination was part of a choice before we incarnated. And so, yeah, it was like it was meant to happen, that everything in his life either prepared him for it or helped him understand. I mean, the ambulance was 100 feet down the road. There was a special doctor that was not normally there from down in Tucson that was like a vascular specialist when he came in. I mean, there was just so many different things that my husband and I are just like, yeah, God was in control. There's no way. Right. And so, yeah. And so just an amazing experience, right? He chose his parents. He chose me. He chose his bio dad. He chose these things because he knew that he needed something for spiritual growth. And they say that Earth is one of the hardest planets to come to. And to me, only the strongest spirits come here. And when I've done soul purpose readings, I actually had one lady who came here and, she was showing me visions of what her existence was before this planet, which was kind of weird to me because I was like, this is odd. Like, because you guys know, like I'm spirit taught, self-taught. I don't get into like a lot of the really woo stuff. And so when I started seeing these visions of like where she existed before, I was like, this is weird, but I'll tell you about it. And she had like this perfect, comfortable life and this, really beautiful, existence and planet. But she was like, it was boring. There was no growth. There was no movement. Right. And so remember too that we're not always just here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to support and help others and to watch. So there's many different reasons why someone incarnates, but those are some of them. So, okay, we're kind of just past our halfway point. So we're going to start and jump in to the healing portion of this. If you haven't healed with me before, I'll kind of talk about that. I'm going to put my hair up because it's warm. I'm in Arizona, guys. I think it was supposed to be like 100 degrees today. It was warm. That's why I went to San Diego last week, where it was like beautiful. If I could move to San Diego, I would move to San Diego. Totally. I would do it. But, I just live on the beach all day. Might be a beach bum. So, okay, if you haven't healed with me before, we do it really simple. We try to make it easy for everybody. We deep breathe in the nose, filling up your lungs. We try to get a little pause and then exhale out in the mouth. And what we're doing is just kind of resetting our energy. I'm going to guide you through a meditation, send you some energy healing. And, I will just assume that if you're here, you're giving permission to receive. If you're not wanting to receive, then feel free to jump off. That's fine as well. If at any time you feel overwhelmed or it feels difficult, go back to your deep breathing and just deep breathe and do the best you can. This is not about doing it perfectly or having mind-shattering visions or anything like that. This is just follow along the best you can. And if you need to stop or take a break or you get overwhelmed, go ahead and do that, because I'll get this class recording up. I've been trying to do it same day, because if I wait the next day, I never get them done. So we'll get this up, and you can watch it again later if you find a struggle. If you feel like you want to watch it over and over again and heal different stuff, go for it. There's always something you can heal. You can come back and do it for, okay, I'm doing this for my, my grandma. Now I'm doing it for great aunt. And now I'm doing it for great grandpa. And I'm doing this for my cousin, whatever you want to do. You can do it multiple times. So that's kind of the nutshell version of what we're going to do. So let's get ready to kind of jump into this. And I can't play music because, copyright stuff, but we're just going to breathe and follow along the best you can. So, and yes, do it for yourself. Absolutely. So someone asked, we can't do it for ourselves. Yes, do it for yourselves. But remember, set your intentions that we're sending this to anybody else who wants to receive it as well. Okay. All right. Let's start in with the deep breathing. I'll guide you guys along and help you set those intentions. Let's go. All right. So we're going to start first. Deep breath in through the nose. Pause. And exhale. Second deep breath in. Pause. And exhale. Third deep breath in. And exhale. Continue with your deep breathing, filling your chest, rise and fall, filling your lungs with oxygen and pushing it out. As you deep breathe in pure white light. As you exhale out all the stagnant energy, the stress that you've been holding on to, and the chaos of the day. Just blow it away. Continue deep breathing as we set our intentions for this healing. In this healing, our intentions are to create a generational healing that we intend and set apart and bless this healing with the purpose of not only healing our personal body, our personal mind, our personal soul, but that this healing is sent backwards to time to all generations and ancestors who would accept it. It is sent forward into the future. To all future posterity who would like to align with this healed version and reality. We send this sideways, up and down, on all layers, all dimensions of time, through all generations, accountabilities, and realities. Take a deep breath in. Feel into your body and ask your body to reflect the area that needs the focus and attention for healing today. There is no right or wrong answer. It just is. Notice if you feel a pain, tingling, or sensation in any part of your body. And I want you to focus your breath into that area as if you are breathing in air and energy. So breathe in and breathe out. As you breathe in, draw in clear, cleansing energy. As you breathe out, release the old, stagnant, toxic energy. Let's take a couple more deep breaths into that area. And out. In and out. Either out loud or in your mind, speak along with me. I clear this energy from all thoughts, perspectives, both physically and spiritually, emotionally, and infinitely. I clear and release any stuck, stagnant, or trapped energy throughout generations past, present, and future that is affecting, and then speak what body part you're working on. So for me, that's my head. For you, it might be your toe. So, and then we're just going to say out loud or in your mind, release, 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 heal, heal, heal. Deep breath in, exhale out. We're now going to envision the cords and connections that we have to the past generations and ancestors. Notice what those connections look like. Are they ropes? Are they chains? Are they duct tape? Whatever it is, there's no right or wrong answer. But just notice what those bonds connect of and consist of. And then envision the right tool that you will need to cleanse, repair, and heal. It could be a bar of soap. It could be a scrub brush. Whatever you need. It could be water. I want you to envision that we are clearing, rinsing, disconnecting any stagnant energies, releasing anything that is still stuck to these family bonds, ties, and connections. And as you do, you notice the connection becomes clean, beautiful, and stronger. Notice that it starts to glow as it heals and repairs. Take a deep breath in. We would now like to invite in generations past, present, and future who would like to join us as support or to receive healing. Notice your ancestors. You might be able to feel them or see them. It might feel warm. It might feel happy. It could feel sad. Just invite them in to sit with us. And between you and your ancestors, notice that there is a beautiful ball of golden light. This golden light begins to glow, to heal, to revolve, and to surround you and every one of those generations and ancestors with this beautiful golden healing light as it warmly restores and regenerates and heals. Notice that this warm golden light spreads beyond the horizon, all the way back to the beginning of time, all the way forward to the very edge of the potential future. It goes all the way down, grounding you to the earth as Mother Earth participates and grounds you with this healing. The light goes all the way up to God, Creator, Universe, your higher power, connecting you fully and completely, as well as any generations and ancestors, with restoring, balancing, healing light. Now speak with me, either out loud or in your mind. I release the past. I release the pain, the trauma, the experiences, the emotions that were disruptive, destructive, and painful. I clear the cords and bonds and ties to any negative or harmful energy or entities, allowing myself, my family, and all posterity to be released from the chains that bind us. That we allow full and complete balance, restoration, and healing to take place. Take a deep breath in and exhale out. Another deep breath in. Exhale out. And one more deep breath in. And exhale out. Allow yourself to just sit in that energy as they surround you and your ancestors in beautiful white healing light, rising up from the ground, filling in any cracks, crevices, or holes, allowing complete balance and restoration to take place. Take a deep breath in. Just feel love and gratitude. We send love and gratitude to the ancestors and generations of the past, thanking them for creating a path to our existence, thanking them for their experiences, both good and bad, that allows us to grow as spiritual human beings. We are grateful for the healing that has taken place today, the healing that will take place in the future. We are so grateful. We send gratitude to God, Creator, Universe, Mother Earth, all the ancient holy masters, Thank you for the support of healing to our ancestors and generations past. We send love and gratitude. Amen. Take a deep breath in and exhale out. You can start moving your feet, your fingers, your toes. Stretch. Come back to the room. Just allow that energy to sit and feel so balanced with you, and just kind of sit with that energy. This healing energy will stay with you for a while. So I would like to remind you, if you haven't healed with me before, be gentle with yourself. Don't watch the news. Don't go listen to heavy metal. Just give yourself some time for peace and balance and restoration. If you're feeling sleepy and tired, go sleep. If you're feeling energetic, maybe go outside and ground your energy a little bit in the grass by touching a tree. And then tomorrow or the next day, take a shower or a bath. Use salt with your, or Epsom salts or sea salt, something else. I'm so glad Ashton's feeling better. But just be gentle with yourself. Don't do as I do, because I don't drink enough, but hydrate, because water is what helps move that energy, right? The feeling of fear left. That's crazy. That's awesome. I love it. I'm so glad you guys are getting some healing with this. Being gentle with yourself is so very important as you're doing healing work. I always just go in with no expectations, except for that we're welcoming healing and allowing healing to come to us. You can repeat this process. I would usually say, don't do it more than twice a week. If you're doing this every day, you're going to overwhelm yourself. There's going to be a lot of emotions and energies that are coming up. There's a huge transition in the world that's going on. There's a secondary spiritual awakening that's going on, especially with people who have rainbow soul purpose. They're going to feel it. It's going to feel hard. It's going to feel impossible. And so if you're going through that, I just want to remind you to just be gentle with yourself. You don't have to make decisions. You don't have to do anything. You can just breathe, right? You can hydrate yourself. Like last week, I was like, okay, too much for me. Like I said, Friday, I'd call my friend. I'm like, there's a plane flying out in 3 hours and we're going. And we went, and you know what we did? All we did, there's this awesome, it's called Free People Co-op in San Diego. I might get that name wrong, but we went to the co-op. We got a basket full of snacks, and we just sat on the beach for 3 hours. And then we flew back home, and it was awesome. And it was so restorative. And so, do that. If you don't want to leave the house, here's my viewpoint on that. There's some times where I don't want to leave the house either. For a couple of days, it's not a bad thing. But if it starts going into days and weeks and stuff, get your butt outside. Even if it's just putting your feet in the grass, touching a plant, touching a tree, right? Because I can tell you, for me, like, I didn't feel like really going anywhere. And I was like, no, we're going to do this. And we did. And we really, really were like, yeah. And I'm just blessed that I have the privilege of flying for free, because my husband works for the airlines. So, I'm lucky that way. Maybe you're not as lucky as me, but I know everybody has an outside. Everybody can find somewhere to ground. Even if you're in the city, your sidewalks are grounded, because they're directly connected. So be gentle with yourselves, work on that healing. I'm going to just stay and answer a few questions. If anybody else has questions in regards to this healing or generational trauma, for the next 4 minutes. And then I'll stay on TikTok for another like 15 minutes after that to answer any other general questions. But yeah, I just remind you that healing is never linear. I know when I first started, I was like, okay, it's going to just boop, and we're going to go, and it's going to be better. And every time it's getting better, and it's going better. And it was more like, and then it was like, the past few weeks, I'm like flat. I'm like, oh my gosh, like And I'm sitting there like, I'm supposed to be like this awesome spiritual, like guru human. And like, I was just like, I cannot function with life anymore. So, you know, I talked about this in the last video I just posted on TikTok. There's a fine line, guys, between spiritual symptoms and like mental health symptoms. So if you get to the point where like you're non-functional, you might need to talk to somebody. You know, I kind of raw dog spiritual awakening, so maybe don't listen to me or follow me with that, because, you know, really honestly, you should probably have some support, because I'm just like, I'm supported by awesome friends who are spiritual healers and naturopaths and things like that. So I have stuff like that. But all right, so to everyone on Zoom, I guess we'll say goodnight for tonight. Thank you guys for joining. And then I will be on TikTok if anybody wants to go join over there. We'll just be answering general questions. We have a bunch of general questions over on TikTok, not related to this class. So I'm going to start answering some of those. But thank you, everybody, for participating, for being there. If you need any support, reach out and email me. Really easy to find me at spiritfluent.com or in any of my bio links. I'd be happy to help with anything you guys need. So, all right, everybody, have a beautiful night. Goodbye to those that are on Zoom. And we'll be over on TikTok if you want to join. So bye, everybody.